So welcome back.
Thank
you so much for
Feels
coming
good
back
to be
out.
back here. I love Plymouth, Michigan.
It is. It's a wonderful town.
Yeah.
As long as you don't look down at the roads, it is.
Very good,
gorgeous and
yeah.
wonderful.
I always say Michigan is my second favorite state after Ohio, of course. But a vacation like up in Traverse City, Elk Rapids. I mean, some of the most beautiful areas I think in the whole country are in that.
I would agree. And our parks are lovely.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know it. I was hoping you'd be willing to just sort of dish with me today.
Let's just wrap. Let's talk.
On some of the new Hyland offerings and to put the people watching or listening to be their representative.
Sure.
How does this impact me? So
Okay.
I know the ECM space, language is always evolving, technology is always evolving, and there's been a lot of new discussions about unstructured data, unstructured documents. Like that is the thing that is the drum that's beating.
Right.
So if you could,
Yes.
can you share with me what that really means? What is unstructured data, unstructured documents, and how it relates?
I think of an unstructured document is something without a predefined format.
Okay.
Right? And it's also maybe something that a traditional computer or relational database can't really make sense of. Could be an image file format, could be a photograph, could be a PDF, could be an email, could be an audio or video file. Something that doesn't have the structure of what we might think of as tagging, of document classification, as metadata, of fields that go with it.
Gotcha. So for your everyday company,
Yes.
what might be some of the things, like an example of what they would have in their repository of unstructured data?
Well, I think the easiest example when you think of unstructured data in an organization is just like file shares full of documents.
Right.
You know, Word documents, PowerPoints, Excel files, and it can get tricky because, right, those documents have data in them, but we really don't know much about it other than maybe the file name, the date it was created, whatever kind of shows up in your Windows Explorer. And unfortunately, that's its own repository, but then organizations have hundreds of repositories now with this same lack of structure that just have all this data and all these documents dumped into them like a big, filing cabinet.
Right.
And it's difficult to find anything because you just kind of shoved it all into the closet.
So
you didn't organize it very well.
Like final report, version 2, final.
Colleen's edits, Ian's edits.
There you go.
Final draft. And there's just stuff everywhere. And there's multiple copies. And we've got no retention on it. We don't even know what we have. We can't find things easily. That's like just almost the tip of the iceberg of many of the problems that come with all this unstructured content.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, the shared folder, the shared directory is sort of like the junk drawer of the business.
Correct.
But like that junk drawer is filled with really important things. It's stuff you just didn't know where to put at the time, or at least my junk drawer is.
No, I think of it, it really is like a treasure trove in a way, but it's just disorganized. Everything's kind of thrown in there.
Right. Okay. So with companies that are wrestling with all their unstructured content or unstructured data, maybe they've got some legacy systems or they've got different silos, their core business application that they work within, and they've got cloud storage, they've got this. Hyland has moved to create the CIC, right? The grand unifier of information. So how did Hyland get to that sort of evolution? Because it forever has been known as like the leader in the content space, but this is a pivot and a shift.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of the early days of Hyland and we think of our flagship product, OnBase. So OnBase got its name from the fact that it used one database to provide structured to unstructured content, right? Like that is where we started. And for those of you that have worked with OnBase, that was kind of our bread and butter. Take your content from other wild places, bring it into OnBase, and we'll add some structure to it. That could be a document type name. That could be keyword values. That could be a date. And we'll put it all in OnBase, and then we'll do something meaningful with it. Well, the dream of a single repository was never quite realized. Number one, right? The file share still exists, right? That's still the example that's out there. And so Hyland took a step back and said, like, what are our customers really facing? And it's that they have a multitude of repositories. They have an unwieldy amount of unstructured data in all types of applications. In fact, like Gartner says, 80% of an organization's content is still unstructured. Why? Because it was so taxing to add that structure to the content. And so how Hyland has evolved is that We are going to help provide structure to unstructured content no matter where it lives. And we're not going to require you to add that structure in manual ways. We're going to use intelligence and cloud-based services that, thanks to AI and this new frontier, to add this structure to this content, and we don't care where the content lives.
That is a very good answer. It's almost like you talk about this regularly.
It's like I've talked about it before. Yeah.
So that's great. So for those organizations that are looking at this, because obviously there's been a lot of change. So
Sure.
ChatGPT came out 3 years ago,
Yeah,
2 years
yeah.
ago, and I don't think 5 years before that there was like any inkling of a thought that ChatGPT could exist
Right.
in the near term.
Yeah.
And since it's come out, all the different LLMs that are out there, there's just been this rapid pace of evolution and just scratching the surface of what we're capable of doing. Right? So in a lot of ways, businesses are sort of, it's so new, and there's so much more new that's coming out, that thinking of the use cases, like we haven't even envisioned how it's gonna work, or how it's gonna. So do you see any challenges with customers, or with the adoption of like not being in the headspace of like, no, you have to. You've been thinking this old way.
Yeah.
This is new. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it comes down to the change management, which is hard for any of us, and we don't know what we don't know. And it's hard in our human brains to picture world, right, that we haven't ever seen before or been familiar with. I think when it comes to AI, it's new and we're using it in ways, but we don't really know what those ways are, right? Like our phone is filled with AI-based applications. It's actually been around since the 1950s. If you think about how AI originated, it was the first like sequence generator, like for numbers. So 2, 4, 6, and it would start to like fill in the next number in a sequence. And then it would start to be the world's fastest and best autocomplete. But then it started to get tripped up. Like it didn't know whether you wanted to file your nails or file your taxes. And then at one point, like Google researchers cracked the code, and it started to develop and create AI models that were intelligent and did know the difference based on context to start to complete some of those things. I think for all of us where we're at right now, we just have to start playing with it. We have to expose ourselves to AI and start using it in practical ways. I think the very easiest way is ChatGPT. It's also using some of the AI built into tools that we already use. So when I'm out with customers and I'm asking like, how are you using AI today? They're giving very practical, real examples. Like they're using, Teams transcription to transcribe and to summarize a meeting. So just start playing with some of those tools and start to explore how you could use it within the content in your organization.
And do you think there's a and this is me just sort of like waxing poetic, right? So I think there's some generational elements to this. So like there are my children, for example, they're effectively digital natives, right?
Yes.
They've grown up in a world where technology is ubiquitous. It's a part of everything that they do. Like I remember my son trying to zoom in on our television because he was used to how, and like that's not even a thought that I would have.
Right.
But for those of us who are more of like digital immigrants, where it's not our first language, right?
Right.
We learn paper that we still have to translate through that process of like, well, this is a thing I have to fill out. And you're like, that doesn't even need to exist. Like we have that info. It's in 20 other things. So do you see that that the thinking of the digital native it inspires more ideas that are like, no, we could do this, or it's progressing things faster or further than someone who's just like, well, this is the way we've always done things.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Right? I mean, I think that's true in all aspects of life. Even myself, like I have a tendency to be set in the traditional content services ways. I've been working with OnBase and these core, ECM platforms for 20 years, thinking outside the box of what was possible years ago and how that could be transformed with AI is something that even I'm still working on. And I'm taking it like bite by bite, piece by piece, and trying to find very tactical, tangible ways to insert AI first as an assistant. I think we're kind of more comfortable with AI as a suggestion maker, as an assistant, as providing us
I would
information,
agree with that. Yeah.
as opposed to letting us make the decision for us. And I think that will come. And I think you're right when you talk about, I like that analogy of the, the native versus the immigrant. I think some of the native AI people that, are just born with AI, like they'll be so comfortable having AI make a decision for them, where I'm still at the point of like, let me see all the choices, give me all the information, but then I'll decide.
Right, right. I have agency over
Exactly.
this. Yeah,
exactly. It's interesting how it's all going to evolve. And I'm interested to see like where our kids, that generation, are with AI 10 years from now. I don't think we can even fathom.
Yeah, that's the thing that sort of twists my brain up is I don't know that we can properly imagine what the landscape will look like, and it's happening so much faster. I know you had a conversation with Christian where you brought up Moore's law of how quickly things are progressing. Like I see that frequency like happening faster, and where it branches off and the ways that it can be leveraged, especially within businesses, but just in everyday interactions, being just more transformative.
Yeah.
So for those businesses that are sort of facing that, we work in industries or consult a lot in financial services and with credit unions. And I feel like the members of credit unions, typically they're older.
Sure.
Like they're aware of the value proposition of credit unions, things like that. But at a certain point, those start to age out. You have to replenish who your members are with younger people. And the expectations, the growing number of digital natives have is different from what we expect. Like speed, efficiency, personalization, like all those elements. So does being able to get all that valuable information from your unstructured data and being able to leverage that, does that assist those businesses more? Or do you see that playing a bigger part?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, right? It's like a blessing and a curse. Sometimes too much information can be overwhelming, but to have access to all of that historical data and information and then use AI to like make sense of it, to distill it down, to analyze it quickly, to pull out the most important points or make predictions or patterns is going to be revolutionary to what's possible. And I think we kind of have to understand and almost like reframe the conversation a little bit. I think sometimes we overestimate how AI is going to change things in the near term. I think organizations will adopt AI in time. There's a lot to figure out in terms of governance and security and cloud or not cloud. But in the long term, we underestimate the impact that AI is going to have. I think we can't even see or imagine what the future is going to look like.
We don't know what we don't know. Like we haven't even gotten the foundation to imagine what it looks like. Yeah. I feel like we're on the same page with that. And it's going to be interesting. So Hyland's bringing a lot of new tech into the mix. So, outside of the changes like the rebranding, which by the way, chef's kiss. I love the new look.
It's spicy. It's hot. It feels
it is
good.
Really nice. Yeah.
I really like it.
So I've put together this series that sort of is exploring some of the functionality of CIC or Kick or the Content Innovation Cloud. And I've been going through the different pillars of what holds those up, the content intelligence, process intelligence, these different pieces. And as I'm exploring these things and I'm looking at it, like there's so much awesomeness that's built into it. And I see you've brought your computer with you. And my hope is that you could maybe show a little bit of what you would like to share that you're most excited to kind of talk about.
Absolutely. I'd love to show a few things off. Because what I am finding is that it's like there's no amount of talking I can do for this to become tangible for people. Like they have to see it.
It's like the Matrix.
Yes,
you have to see it for yourself.
So the first one that I'd like to show you is knowledge enrichment. A lot of organizations will ask, like, where should I start on my AI journey? And I think there's two things to think about. The first is, how do you get your data, your documents, all of this unstructured content that we talked about ready for AI? And then the second piece of that is, what should your AI policy be? What are the security parameters you want to put around your content and your data? Where can employees use AI and where can they not? Where can we insert AI to make a decision, or where should it really act more like an assistant? So the first one that I want to show is knowledge enrichment. And I show this one because it's a little bit of what's happening behind the scenes in a lot of our intelligence products. So we offer this as a standalone developer tool. It's an API toolkit that you can use for data curation. So taking a piece of unstructured content and providing structure to it. We use this. It's our own native proprietary technology in many of our content intelligence products, but we also offer it to our customers to use on their own for their own needs and purposes. So this is an illustration of knowledge enrichment, which is really just APIs behind the scenes, but this allows us to show what's really happening.
Okay.
And so I'm going to insert a document, a photograph of a claim that was submitted for a house that has some damage. So they're submitting a claim against their homeowner's insurance policy due to an unfortunate, tornado that came through the area. What we are doing with knowledge enrichment is looking at the photograph, and this is how incredible this AI is, and identifying different pieces of metadata about that photograph. It's almost as if a human, but it's AI, looked at this photograph and described what was happening, where the damage is, the area is effective. It's even doing some reasoning to determine, is the damage on this house low, medium, or high? And it's saying that it's of moderate severity. It is analyzing this photo and even indicating what the potential cause of the damage was. So it's almost as if these technical tools have developed like theory of mind. And I think my favorite is this visual description down at the bottom where AI is describing what it sees in the photograph. And now we have curated all of this rich metadata that we can use for search, for processing, to assist, or to take action.
That's really impressive. So it's like you said, it's almost like having a human who has looked at this and with the same level of judgment and the ability to apply context to it. So if you're in the adjusting process and you're like a high severity, we need to escalate this to this team, like you could quickly identify those things and be like, yep, make sure that people in some real big problems that we get the right team on it right away. Yeah. Wow.
I always say, like, if you're a little scared or a little nervous about AI, like, you probably should be, because it is unbelievably good at what it's doing. But at the same time, like, we can choose to use AI for good and for all the potential use cases. And I think of like so many applications of AI to like forget the business of the content processes, but to like really better our world. If I can, wrap up this example really quick. Let's say this claim was submitted. Think about an opportunity to assist a claims adjuster in fraud prevention. So we know there was, a horrible hurricane, tornado, flood damage in a particular area. And we get a lot of claims that are submitted, and we have our knowledge enrichment do that analysis on all these claims photos. And, most of the claims for the houses on that street were all damage on the west side, except for this one house that happened to be on the east. Well, that's odd. Right? Because that wasn't the direction the wind was flowing. And so being able to just flag this one for someone to look at based on a photograph where we were able to extract data. I mean, it's like the potential for some of these things to assist physicians, claims adjusters, mortgage loans representatives, and, everybody in between to do their jobs better, smarter, faster, reducing wait times, improving customer service. Like, the opportunities are really limitless.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Yet AI still struggles with CAPTCHA. I don't know if that's a bicycle or not.
Yeah. First one, is just kind of this data enrichment and getting your data ready for AI to use. And the more information, we have, the more structure we're kind of able to provide to this unstructured data, the more potential we have. And then I think the second is just like kind of getting that AI policy in place. I was with the state government a couple weeks ago and, asking about their AI policy, and they're just in the beginning stages of getting it formalized. They're using resources like NIST and the Department of Homeland Security to get some general federal government guidelines, but they're a state, right? And they've already outlined some really interesting use cases where you can and can't use AI. For example, police officers in the state are not allowed to use AI to write their police reports. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Public school teachers in the state are not allowed to use AI to help write their lesson plans. Right. Makes sense. We want to use the intelligence of the eyewitness of the account, who's, the police officer that's interviewing someone to write that report, and also the teacher who knows her students, who has worked with second graders to write that lesson plan. So it's really interesting how AI is going to shape the future of our world and practical, real ethical considerations for using it.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a balance that has to happen of what is the practical reality? Like the AI, the genie is out of the bottle. Yeah. There's no way to avoid the fact that this exists. So how do we reasonably leverage that as a society and put the guardrails in place and maximize the value we can extract from it? So have you seen any other sort of aha moments with clients when they see what these new capabilities can do?
Yeah.
Because again, we could talk about it, but just seeing what that that's pretty impressive.
It is.
Those notes are probably of higher quality than someone who who could scrutinize it on their own. So that's really helpful.
And that took seconds. So now I want to bring you into knowledge discovery. So the first piece that I showed is knowledge enrichment. We're doing that data curation, and you could certainly use that as a toolkit on your own, right? In your own applications and use cases. We are also using that same toolkit behind the scenes on this knowledge discovery. So you have all of this data that's unstructured in your organization. We're using that knowledge enrichment in one fell swoop to add that structure so that we can search against it. And then we've also built these agents that have these LLMs as a brain that we can ask questions of that data that we've just curated. So that description of the photo, let's say.
So this is knowledge discovery?
Yeah, so this is knowledge discovery. This is federated content search, searching against multiple repositories and aggregating the results into a view. And now you may think, and I'll get the question sometimes, well, like, how is this different than a full text search? It's very different. It does have elements of full text search where it's like, you're looking for a word and it finds that word, but it also has more human-like intelligence built in where it's able to, let's say, do a summarization or build a table or a presentation or a display more so than just looking for that word, word by word and saying, oh, here it is, I found it. Oh, here it is, I found it. It has so much more context and reasoning to it.
Gotcha. So it's able to look at the various repositories, identify and apply context and judgment to yes, this is related to each other, not just happens to have the same word in it. And then it's doing it at scale as opposed to one human being who's reading, millions of pages. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's elements that are the same, right? We saw that knowledge enrichment where we need to extract some of that text and some of that data. Traditional OCR technology, if you have machine printed text that needs to be made machine readable, you'd use an OCR engine, and you're right. You're just finding the right word, and it found the word. It doesn't know any context or information about it. Now we're able to get that same type of textual data from images that didn't have any text on them in the first place. And we're more than just finding a word. We know what that word means in relation to all of the other words.
Okay.
Just like our human brains work, which is really wild. And here we see this example when a customer account holder dies. It's pulling from multiple places, multiple repositories, SharePoint, OnBase, intranet sites, HR systems, to give us the steps to take when a customer account holder dies. And it shows us then all of the documents that were referenced. So a little bit of a grim example, but I chose it because this actually came from a customer that says, this doesn't really happen all that often. So it's it would be an actual use case that it's not part of someone's day-to-day activities. That they do need to know, boy, what do I do? And they're able to come in. They don't have to know what system to go to. They don't have to know what document to pull up. And it pulls the latest and greatest information for the policies at this particular bank, and it lets them know exactly what to do.
And the benefits of using that sort of LLM, conversational language type prompting is you don't have to think of how to frame what your question is in a way that's a complicated query. It's just sort of what do I do in this circumstance?
In this case, you're asking just like you might ask your coworker.
So are you,
this agent is your assistant in that way.
Are we this close to like Star Trek where you can just like talk to the computer on deck and just like show me this?
I think we are.
That's impressive.
I think you're going to ask the same question just about with your voice and you'd get that answer. It's that same idea. So it's really exciting and revolutionary.
All right. So if you look a few years down the road, like put your prognosticator hat on. What role do you see unstructured data playing in business? Do you see it being even more central, or do you see these tools being leveraged at such scale that like that's not really a thing anymore? Like unstructured data it's just data now because we can pull it all together.
I think, that the amount of data that organizations are going to create in the future is not going to slow down. There's only going to be more and more data that created. But I think you're right, that siloed definition of this is structured data and this is unstructured data and this is a PDF and this is an image file and this is an audio file, like that's going to start to go away and it's going to become more gray.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be information that exists anywhere within those organizational walls. And it's just going to become this treasure trove of insight that we can now tap into to improve the business in a variety of ways.
Yeah, like I think of the historical information, right? So I know the statistic, the 80% is unstructured, but how much of that came from a period when it was like really unstructured data? Like where does that percentage exactly come from? And how much of that hasn't been plumbed at all or thought about, or what could be in those little morsels of trends and examples or things like. Anytime that I've looked for something, going back to some of the earlier jobs, when you would go to find something, you had to know what it was called and where it was located, and hope no one else accessed it and changed it or ruined it. And with this new sort of way of being able to connect all the dots together, really businesses have actionable insights all the time. Everything that they do is going to be informed by what they've done in the past and what's currently happening. So. That wasn't even a question. I just was like, hey, this is a thing.
Well, it is. I mean, it's wild to think about because there is such a vast amount of data that we as human beings could never sift through it all and make sense of it all. But yet these tools are going to provide that insight for us, that summarization for us that we so desperately need. I, like you, I'm the same way. Like, it was in this folder, this repository. I know it was a PDF, right? Like, that's going to go away. The way in which we think about trying to find what we're looking for as business users is going to completely change.
Yeah, and so do you feel like this will be a question? I swear, it's not just going to be me saying something.
I'm here for it.
So. As businesses adopt these and then as employees and users start to interface with it more regularly, I imagine the expectation, like everything else, is like, this is table stakes.
Yeah, it's just what we do.
Yeah, and anyone that's not doing that is, Moore's Law. They're years behind in a very short period of time.
Right. It's like in the early days of, like the internet, like organizations that felt like, oh, well, we don't need to be online. We don't need a social media presence. We don't need a web page. It's like, they would have really missed a big opportunity. They're probably not in business right now.
That internet thing's a fad. We don't need to work with that.
We don't need that, right?
So I think that brings me to one of my other questions too, which is the term content orchestration.
Sure.
Right. So I'm hearing that more and more. Do you see companies moving more towards that unified, orchestrated approach to managing all their information?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think what has changed is instead of one repository to rule them all, it's almost like one parent orchestration engine that is interoperable across all of these systems, that is able to keep track of and keep consistent the data, the processes, the decisions across these multitudes of applications. So instead of having a one-to-one integration point between system A and B, it's going to be finally like that hub and spoke model for real.
That grand connector.
Yes, right? Where there is the one system that is just aware in some cases of all of the different activities that are taking place and is sharing data and information between them, but allowing the content to reside in its system of record.
So was that sort of the driving motivation for Hyland's push into this space, is just sort of foreseeing like this is how things will work?
Yes, in the future. And that it does need to be a hybrid model of cloud-based services, which are easier to develop and implement and install, but to not leave behind the on-prem, kind of old school relational database content repository that still holds so much of that organizational insight and business value and differentiators and all of the things that make that organization unique and special.
That
I think of some of our competitors, and of course I'm biased, that talk about content federation and application orchestration. Often what they're referring to is surface level connections with other cloud native repositories. And they are unable to connect to these deeper core applications that really hold the lion's share of organizational insight and information. There's a big difference there that I think sometimes is lost in translation that I hope this audience really feels, right? I mean, I talk to customers that still have mainframe applications and green screens, right? Because they're running the business.
Right.
And we can connect with those. We're not leaving them behind.
So, yeah, and I saw in one of the presentations, and I'm not sure if it was you or it was Tess, but it was the number of business applications that like the average business has that drives how they operate. Right. It was like 19. I forget the number.
Yeah. I think it's 21 that are kind of like content applications. And I think we both know that's just the content applications. Like many customers have like hundreds of applications that they use for all kinds of things. But can you imagine 21 different enterprise applications that house content and these, insights that organizations need?
Yeah, that is
wild to think about. It's a lot of places to look, right? If you've got a lot of logins, you got to remember.
There's some person who's watching this who's had a filing cabinet. They're like, I had it figured out in the beginning. Just keep everything in this.
It just never became a reality. It didn't, and that's okay. Like we've adopted, we've grown. Like at the time, that was the vision, and it's okay. We evolve, we adapt, we change. I like to say we flex. We flexed.
There was a time when I could flex, but not so much anymore. I creak as I bend.
Can I show you a little more?
I would love to see more.
All right. The next one that I want to show, and again, this is using a bit of that knowledge enrichment under the hood, is our intelligent document processing. So to kind of use the old school language, it would be capture, right? I'm going to bring content in, I'm going to classify it, I'm going to identify it, I'm going to extract content about it. And we're going to, create a quick IDP project. And I'm going to not upload files at the moment, but I want to show you how easy and quick it is to create some document classifications. So let's say I've got like a quick mailroom scenario. And notice I am just entering the name of the document. I'm not providing any sort of description. So coming into my mailroom, might be driver's license, payslip, invoice, mixed bag of items. Maybe I've got an I-9 or two, a loan application. All right, so I've created just a small grouping of classifications on the left-hand side. So these are types of content that might be coming into the organization. So now I'm going to upload some files and show you how, with nothing more than just the name of the document, the intelligence of the large language model used within this tool paired with our knowledge enrichment capability are going to classify these documents automatically.
All right, let's see it.
Let's see it, right? So at this point, we're bringing the content in. That's step one. So we're going to bring them in, and I'll show you the documents before we choose to classify them. But one thing that I want to draw your attention to, you'll see that we've got an invoice, we've got a driver's license, we've got a loan at the top. And then I have a multi-page document, and it's showing me all of the different pages, which are actually individual documents. And having worked in the content space for so many years, and I don't know what challenges you've faced, separating a single file into multiple documents was often a challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Where does one start? Where does the other stop? What if the I-9 is 1 page? What if it's 3? What if the loan application is 5 pages or 7? What do we do? So I'm going to turn on my document separation, and I'm both going to separate and classify these documents. And at this point, our large language model, in this case, just like our discovery, is LLM agnostic, which you can play around with different LLMs in the background to see which ones might work best for your content. And then something unique that Hyland is doing. So we're not just taking like the base Anthropic Claude Sonnet 3.7 LLM and using it in this tool. We're also tweaking those models for industry-specific applications. For example, medical records or medical claims billing, to make them even smarter towards specific types of content. But before I could even finish that, explanation, we see that our documents are now 9 documents separated into our 5 classifications.
Wow.
Just the word invoice was enough for the brain of this tool to know that it was an invoice. And so here we take a look at that invoice. And if I could bring your attention to the right-hand side, in the old days of Capture, when I wanted to identify what fields to extract, I went through multiple iterations. I was creating templates where I'm dragging like little zonal OCR boxes around the fields. Like, here's where you'll find the invoice number. And then it wasn't just like, okay, a whole other invoice. Sometimes the same invoice from the same company would be like slightly skewed and it wouldn't find it, But trying to find where all these fields were. And then we got a little smarter. We said, well, if you see invoice or invoice pound or invoice number, then the invoice number is probably near there. So it got a little smarter. Now we don't even have to do any of that configuration. Notice I didn't even have to enter invoice number. It just knew that this was an invoice and that invoice number was probably something that you'd want to grab.
You might want to keep track of that. Yeah.
And if you see that right in the center, you see how, I'll zoom in a little bit.
It's highlighting it as you.
Highlighted it.
Yeah.
It knows and it shows us where we're extracting that information. So I'll just go ahead and grab some of these different values. Heck, I can accept all. And I'm saying, yeah, I liked your suggestion. So here's where AI is kind of acting as an assistant. And notice that I am in the role of the configurator, the administrator. So really this process I'm doing one time for invoices. But think of how easy it is to now get a process like this up and off the ground. Mere minutes, and I've configured the extraction for my invoice type.
Wow.
And we are giving 2 levels or I guess I should say 2 variables in terms of confidence. First is the confidence that the OCR, we're using Amazon Text Track behind the scenes, but again, you can swap that in and out, has read the machine printed text accurately and translated it to machine readable text. And then the second is, okay, what is the LLM's confidence that it extracted the exact value correct? Because, sometimes it can be fuzzy. Is it an S or an 8? Those kind of traditional things. But we are seeing the highest extraction confidence levels than I've seen in any tool of the past.
Wow.
These LLMs, these brains are wildly smart. So I'm going to add just one more field. You see on here that we have a little table of items ordered. Notice all I have to do is tell the tool I'm looking for a table. And then I'm going to go ahead and extract that value. And one of the complexities of invoices in the past was extracting all of this table data, which were all of those line item details of all the things that were ordered. And it's like, just like that, we've got the table data extracted and ready to go.
That's really impressive.
It's really, really wild. All right. So if we have time for another one, I want to show you the loan application. And I picked this one because this is a handwritten document. Again, 2 challenges for the capture of the past was reading handwriting, ICR, or OMR, which is optical mark recognition. So like checkboxes, radio buttons, those types of fields on a document. And in the same way here, we're going to get some field suggestions because it's looking at this document and reading it. We can come in here and, grab a couple. I'll just pick 2 for now. But let's say I also, all right, it's going to extract these values. I want to do a little bit more reasoning. So I can now ask questions of this tool and get an answer. And I've asked all kinds of crazy questions. So first I'll start with the OMR. So this is one that is like, pretty basic. So I'm kind of asking like, what is the marital status? Notice I didn't do any additional configuration, and it's going to look at these OMR marks, these little check boxes on the left, and it will identify whether they're married, separated, or unmarried. I mean, it's wild. Just to how little configuration is there. And we'll save and add another one. And let's say now I want to know, what is the risk level? And I'll say, assign this application a risk level of low, medium, or high. And we'll see how it does. And in some cases, you can even say, and give me the reason for this evaluation. But I bring up this to illustrate an example. This is where we're starting to use, this generic LLM brain and pairing it with organizational insight. So how would a human have rated this application in the past? Well, as Hyland, as like stewards of your organizational content, we have years of those historical human decisions on evaluating the risk of a loan application stored in an OnBase system. So now we're able to say, okay, brain of this LLM, pair that with all of this historical data and assign this a risk value. So it's really wild.
So in that sense, organizations are effectively able to help use their previous decision-making to help guide their effectiveness with automating future decision-making.
Yes.
Well, that seems like it would be beneficial.
Yeah. I'll do one more here, and I'll say, based on this person's monthly gross, what should their salary? And let's see how it does. So it doesn't know what the monthly mortgage payment should be. It's looking at this application. We know that they make $8,000 a month. And I haven't even told it, like, here at our organization, we recommend 28%, 30%. It's just knowing what it knows of mortgages and typical recommendations to know that this should be $2,400.
Wow.
So it is really wild what these tools are able to do. Oh, I forgot. Let me show you another invoice here. This is an invoice that's not really the highest quality, and it's also in German. Yet it translated that German invoice into English because that's how I've configured it. And it got all of this table data.
Oh, that's insane. Wow.
I mean, it's like what we are able to accomplish now with AI is absolutely mind-blowing. So really, really wild.
So I guess, like, to sum it up, there's probably like a little bit of value for business to be able to do all that.
Yeah. And I mean, if we even wanted to get into Automate, now we have this data and we're feeding this orchestration engine that is becoming the hub of, we could take all that data that I just captured and feed OnBase. We have connectors to a multitude of different applications. It's all REST API based, and we're sharing that data, passing it around, and we're building those orchestration processes with the same chat prompts I just showed to configure that IDP.
That's really impressive. So the LLM agnostic idea, is that sort of due to how many there are? What does the future look like? That you're not married to one particular model because, like ChatGPT, for example, I don't know, like every month they've got some new variant or O3 mini high, O1. Like they are constantly releasing new things. Is that so that you can stay ahead of that? Or
absolutely. Yeah. It's so that, Hyland's going to do what we do best, which is managing the innovations around the content. We're not in the business of building large language models. We want to just be in the business of tweaking them for content needs. But exactly that. It also allows us to say, boy, we don't know what new players might even come to into the LLM space that we haven't even heard of today. We don't know who kind of the winner of that race is going to be.
Right.
And different models have different specialties based on the ways that they've been designed, created, configured, trained. That allows us to play around with different models for different needs, for different purposes, and kind of wait and see how they all evolve and be ready for the best one at that time.
That's impressive. All right. I like that. So are there any common questions that you've been getting from customers or colleagues? So fill us in. Give us the inside scoop.
I would say without a doubt, everyone who sees this, like just like you, is like, wow, like that's wild, especially if they've ever configured any of these processes before. They're like, I know how long it would have taken me to create that, capture process that you just built. Everybody's asking about security, right? That's what they want to know. I think the first question that I'm getting is this data and what of this data is leaving my enterprise and going to be in the cloud? And okay, I'm maybe comfortable with a hybrid cloud environment. Like, what's leaving my environment? What's living in Hyland's cloud? For how long? And how are you securing it? Right? Those are the questions that everyone wants to know. Hyland has governance and security top of mind. We are building the entirety of the Content Innovation Cloud to be NIST, FedRAMP, SOC 2 compliant. We do not underestimate the importance of security on all levels, like at rest, in transit, user permissions, all of the aspects of security. The way these solutions work today is that we are providing content federation tools to make the content that you're comfortable with leaving your environment available to our Content Innovation Cloud so that we can perform services on it. Based on the product, it's there temporarily, right? It's only in flight as we're reading it and making decisions, but it always remains kind of then in the system of record as the final document. We're just using the data. In other instances, like the IDP that I just showed you, we are storing that content temporarily while we evaluate it, but then ultimately we're sending it to that system of record for final storage and keeping. So definitely security is top of mind in our customers, and I want you all to know that it is top of mind for us too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I imagine too, like the permission side of things too.
Yeah.
Like that you want to make sure that an employee who is searching and you're going out to this entire, federated environment, that they're only going to see the things that they're allowed to see.
Right. And the other aspect of security is like, the question that I'll get that's like in the same vein as security is like, well, is my data going to be mixed with somebody else's, or how is that all working? And no, you will have as a customer of Hyland, your own instance. Your data is all siloed and kept separate and private from every other one of our customers. We are acting and making decisions just on your data, which is also one of the ways that we do reduce those AI hallucinations, because it's making decisions and recommendations based on your data and only your data, not every invoice that has ever been seen by any one of our customers ever, right? Like just yours.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there any other thing you'd like to show me?
Yeah, I might.
All right, let's look at it.
My favorite thing is showing off our software. So if you bear with me for one more item for me to show off, I'd like to just show you a little bit of Automate and how we are building processes and forms using AI as our assistant to kind of start the process for us.
Okay.
So we've seen how we've configured some of these classifications and extractions. Let's say we want to build the capture process, right? Like, did the classification and extraction meet our thresholds in terms of confidence level on OCR and on extraction? Maybe we need someone to review. Maybe there's other steps to the process. There could be some redaction that needs to take place. Let's build the bones of that process. So we have, using AI and our experience of designing capture processes in the past, a way to jumpstart building a process in Hyland Automate. And now don't blink or you'll miss it. That's how quickly it creates that process. But I'm going to start building a document classification and field extraction process. And just like that, in Hyland Automate, it builds the shell.
Wait, it was that one button?
That
was okay.
That knew these are the document classifications that you've created, and we have a basic sense of what a capture process should look like. Let me design for you the shell of the process. So it's saying the document comes in, we're going to classify it. Was it correct? If not, we need someone to review it, because right in here now, I could go into the properties and set what I want that confidence level to be. And that's the only real tweak that I have to make. If it meets that threshold, right, it's like 90 or higher, move it on to extraction. If not, bring a person in to review. And then move it along, and then we can have a document review sub-process if we need it. to have someone take a look at this process. And then lastly, we could throw this document into OnBase. But I'll show you just kind of a few tips and little things that make this tool so special. Now, again, this is all cloud-based. It's all interoperable. It's working with multiple applications, not just Hyland's applications, but it's smart. So it knows that if we need to have a human in the loop, they're probably going to need some sort of screen to do their work. And we will build that little shell of that screen automatically, knowing the types of documents and the fields that we've assigned to that documents. It will show that presentation of that document, the document classification, and the field extraction, and build the screen automatically.
Wow. So it's like reasoning out the requirements for that stage based on all of the context. And that's wild. Okay.
It's so cool. And so let's say here we want ultimately these documents to land in our OnBase system. All we have to do is extend our process and build in a connector. So in Automate, we use OpenAI, we use REST APIs, we have connectors for Slack, for all of our Hyland products, for Teams, whatever you might want to do with this data, inside the four walls of your organization, or even in communication with someone externally, we have these pre-built connectors. So let's say I want to build, I want to connect to my OnBase instance, and I ultimately want to send all the content that I just captured and reviewed and classified into OnBase to kickstart a business process. All I have to do is add that step in the process. And then when I go into the properties, it already has OnBase specific, information that I can connect and assign my variables to OnBase keywords from there.
Wow.
All right, one last little bit. And that is, I want to show you how we can build a form using Gen AI. So I gave the example earlier of the state that said, the officers cannot write the reports with Gen AI, but that doesn't mean that the form that they fill out to write the report can't be built with Gen AI. So I'm just going to copy and paste here. But let's say I just describe in my own language what this electronic form should look like. And at this stage, I'll generate the form. So I said I want a police form and I want to capture, the suspect's name, address, their driver's license information. I want to leave a spot for the officer to write the whole report. Maybe they want to attach some documentation. I just described it in natural human language. And now, while it takes about 30 to 60 seconds to design that form, which might feel like an eternity as we're sitting right here and I'm waiting for this to work, it's really not. I mean, to build a form like this would take hours of time, making it dynamic, meaning that it's got data sets already built in, that it's got data validation, that it knows what fields should be required, that it gives us suggestions. I mean, it's really wild where it's able to start. And it built for us a form that has all of the suspect information, their driver's license, right? It already knew that if it's a driver's license, it's probably a state that's issuing it. When might it expire? When was it issued? We could pull in criminal activity from another system. We'd get their address information and have a spot to attach and upload documents.
Wow.
I mean, all within a fraction of the time. Oh, and it's a birth date? Oh, I got a date picker right here for you to add that. Oh, it's a social security number? Well, I already know that this has to be masked in a certain way, in a certain format with a certain number of digits. I don't have to tell it what a social security number should look like. It already knows. And then, of course, if I need to do some tweaking or some modifications, I can re-describe the form and regenerate, or I can just go in on each individual field and start tweaking, and I can even add more fields to my form and kind of work from here in that same drag-drop interface.
That's really impressive.
It's really cool what is possible using AI as an assistant. And in our studio modeling, I'm acting as an administrator building some of these processes. You see how quickly they can get off the ground. Now imagine some of these assistant type tools living and breathing within our workflow processes, aiding and making decisions. So as we build our agents, they're helping both our administrators and end users alike.
It seems like it becomes a feedback loop of efficiency growing, right? Like you have more awareness of what's in your various systems.
Yep.
You have more actionable data that you can leverage
with.
to do things. Then you have the tools to be able to implement solutions to processes, then you have a way to evaluate how effective those are. So it just continues to accelerate your ability to just be better at your job easier and to perform tasks faster.
And the speed at which this is all happening is unprecedented. Like, not only is AI growing by leaps and bounds each and every day, but the way in which we're able to include those types of technologies in our solutions and the rapid pace at which Hyland is developing is also unprecedented. You were there. We announced in DC the Content Innovation Cloud in September.
Right.
We had nothing but, kind of mock-ups of this vision at the time, like what our vision for it would be. This is now all live production software that customers are using either in beta or production already 6 months later.
I have to give Hyland credit, like the whole team, the fact that there was a development roadmap and there is a tangible thing that exists, like that's not just impressive, but it inspires a lot of confidence in all of these advancements, that it's like and the roadmap that you have, like, are there any other elements that you can give us an exclusive?
Sure.
No, anything that you know of that's on the roadmap that you're particularly excited about, because I feel like we can all take a big exhale, knowing that you've set out to accomplish something and you've done it. Like, it's been delivered and it's continuing to accelerate. Just seeing some of the things at the SKO, like, that was impressive, and like, they exist now.
Right.
Like, they're here.
Yeah. We went from like ideas at Community Live and the framework of what the software would start to look like, to being at our sales kickoff in January with real live software that was in beta, to beginning to release these things in March and April into production with customers using them. We already have 150 beta customers on the CIC using these tools, giving us feedback. And I mean, I'm in here one day playing around doing a demo, and then the very next day I'm seeing new features added already. I mean, that's like without me having to upgrade or do anything, which is just vastly different from some of the technology that we know today. What I'm most excited about is how the world of the traditional content services platform like OnBase and the CIC are really going to come together. I think if I were to dispel one myth, it's that these are not two separate things. I mean, the Content Innovation Cloud is services to make sense of the content that is in these existing systems, and they really do work together. And the CIC is meant to elevate the OnBase implementation that's living within your organization today. So it's bringing that Ask Discovery button into an OnBase client. It's a prompt within a workflow where the workflow prompt in OnBase is asking Discovery a question, bringing that answer back, and then maybe another agent is evaluating that answer and saying, well, based on that information, I want to do this, this, this with the document at hand. It's living in a workflow and having a document up and maybe an AI summarization of that document right there, or a historical record presented to that human that said, the past 10 times we saw something like this, here's what the human did.
Right.
So we don't have to worry about like the AI making all the decisions right away. Let's just allow it to give us suggestions, ideas, recommendations. You know, when I was here last time talking to Christian about using AI to help me in some of my yoga classes, right? Like, I still know better on how to teach a yoga class. And I decide what suggestions I want to implement because they make sense and which ones don't. But how awesome to have just like another brain working right alongside me to be the best yoga instructor or evangelist I can be.
Yeah, I think the fact that all these the information that's being pulled together is happening at such a large scale based on so much that you couldn't reasonably expect someone to go through your entire content history and know, well, what have you done in the past?
Right, in the past.
How did that work the other 11,000 times this took place? But you can get a really quick summary that's like, well, we did this, and these were the outliers, and this was the circumstance that this is...
it's just the beginning.
It's pretty impressive.
It really is just the beginning.
I feel like I'm repeating that word over and over, but it really is mind-blowing just how much has occurred, how quickly this has been implemented and how much it can do right now and what the future looks like for this is just...
Yeah. And I'm excited to see and to learn. A big part of my job as an evangelist, as it always seems like I'm on this side talking about what's new that Hyland's doing.
Yeah.
But a big part of my job really is also to hear from our customers and to evangelize back into Hyland. What are our customers looking for? What do they need? How are they implementing our software and solutions? And I'm really excited for more of our customers to start adopting this and bringing those stories back and then sharing them with your audience if you'll have me back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to just do one more to show you kind of how these two worlds could potentially come together. So this is the OnBase app builder, and this is a denials management application. So if a healthcare organization reaches out to an insurance company for pre-authorization, or they want to understand, will this insurance company pay this medical procedure that needs to take place? There are occasionally these denials, and we need to better understand, why was this claim denied? Do they need more information? What was the reason it was denied, so that the healthcare organization can determine, what do we need to do? Do we need to change something, provide more information? So here we are in the app builder. It's a very simplified app that has a little dashboard. These are my workflow queues. These are different pieces of information. You notice this is just OnBase. It doesn't have all the buttons, all the ribbons. It just lets me know what I need to do. And I have 6 items where documentation is needed. And so I'm going to open up a particular document, a coding validation review that came back. And this is pulling the document from OnBase, presenting it here in the OnBase app builder. And now I have created an agent that is going to look at this document and summarize for me why this particular claim was denied, or what more information is needed, so that I don't necessarily have to look at the document and read the whole thing and try to understand why this claim was denied and what we need to do differently to get this patient the care that they need. My AI assistant right here is telling me the claim was denied because of this diagnosis code. And as a result, we won't cover it. I mean, so this is these two worlds converging. We've got this really simplified persona-based interface in the OnBase app builder, and we're using one of our AI agents, that same knowledge enrichment, to grab this data, to make sense of it, and then an agent to give us that summarization.
That's really cool.
And this will be here probably by the end of the year.
Wow.
If not sooner, that we're seeing these AI that we've built natively in the cloud, which is a competitive advantage, right? Because we're using the latest and greatest technology in the cloud, but we're able to bring it into these premise-based solutions in a very secure, mindful way, meaningful way, right? Oh, so neat.
Yeah, that's
So
really
neat.
impressive.
Yeah, here's my document, and it's going to look at this document and bring it up, and then I can show my AI review, and my AI assistant is now looking at this document, and the human is still in the loop to make that decision, but it's going to give me information. All right, this one was denied because it was a medical record review that was improper payments in the past. I mean, very different than the previous reason for denial.
Yeah, and so that summary is the evaluation piece, saying this is what happened, or this is why this took place, and then here's the stuff.
Correct.
So are you then able to leverage using this, for example, you resubmit it, right?
Yeah.
And it gets approved. Are you able to then leverage the success of, like, oh, well, in this circumstance, we took this action and this was more effective.
It was approved. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's that accelerating how quickly you can accelerate.
Absolutely. And we're looking here at individual documents, but that agent could potentially be referencing an entire history of a patient's healthcare services and bringing up, past information and past, like you said, past claims and why they were denied and what was done differently to get them approved. And there's just so much historical data then could be brought into this decision-making to give our knowledge worker more information to expedite the process.
Wow.
So great.
Well, huzzah on that. That is very cool. Well, I cannot thank you enough for coming out.
Pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. And it's always good to see you and have you here. And we'll see you again soon. I hope.
If in Vegas, if not sooner.
Yes.
See you all in Vegas in August. Cheers.
I think we can all agree that the Content Innovation Cloud could be transformative to an organization. And you probably have a lot of questions. And if you do, give us a call at Datum Evolve. We're a Hyland Core partner, and we would love to answer all of your questions.
You could like we could close off and then you could come back like one more, like if you see it like after the credits roll, if you stay on.
Thank you for watching the credits. You're probably wondering, why is there another 4 minutes on this video?
Yeah.
Is it just black space?
All right, well, the last little secret bit after the credit roll that I'll show you, you asked about the future and what's coming. It's really an agent builder, a library of agents that some Hyland has built and some that our customers will be able to build themselves, that we have tweaked for specific industry use cases on both the side of the LLM. Like we've made these brains even smarter, like for insurance underwriting.
Wow.
But then we've also begun to build a library of prompts that will tell these agents what to do in very specific ways so that they're following the protocol of that industry, that application, that task, and also the way the organization wants them to run. So it's like, you're building this army or farm of all of these different agents that can either act as assistants, just give me information, let my human make the decision, or that are taking action. And I think for each organization, it'll be up to their own comfort level in terms of how and when they implement these agents to different degrees and varying degrees. But I'm so excited to think about, some of these agents working behind the scenes. I tell the story of like the workflow process that, is 5 steps, and then you get to that 6th step, and that's where you need a human. And then, the workflow picks back up and the deterministic process begins again. I mean, now we're kind of inserting an agent into that 6th step, and we're able to automate with straight through processing even further. So
that is wild.
It's really wild. So we are building this global agent library of agents for organizations to begin to use and implement, and we're tweaking them and learning from you, our customers, on the types of agents that you need and giving you a tool to kind of build your own as well, your own little workers.
Yeah, that is so. Yeah, you're hiring a skill set that is uniquely suited for that task. That's really cool.
I'm pretty pumped to see where this goes. This will kind of be the next thing that we showcase. You might get a little bit of a preview at Community Live, but this is the next thing coming.
I am excited to see that, because I just catching some of the things that you had listed there.
Yeah,
I was like, that is
use that.
fraud detection.
That would be cool.
Underwriting.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So it's going to be awesome. And I think one of our differentiators, and to kind of like clean up some of the languages, there are a lot of other competitors out there that say that they have agents. Well, their agents are acting as assistants, a lot like the discovery summarization that I showed, where it's an assistant. It gives you the steps, it gives you the information. Where we're really going to have a competitive edge is in these industry specific, automation agents that are content specialists,
right,
and with domain expertise that have been built to have the brain and the mind of a claims adjuster or a fraud detector or a policy renewal specialist.
Yeah.
And the future is very bright, very exciting.
Well, thank you so much.
Of course. Bye again.